Well, I'd love to stand here and tell the American people, we can cut your taxes and we can increase spending and everything's going to be just fine. But I can't do that because I'm here to deliver a dose of reality. This bill dramatically increases deficits in the near term, but promises our government will be fiscally responsible 5 years from now. Where have we heard that before? How do you bind a future Congress to these promises? This bill is a debt bomb ticking.
Well, despite Congressman Thomas Massie's best efforts, House Republicans have narrowly and very narrowly passed President Donald Trump's tax cut and border bill, which includes several of his campaign promises, but adds trillions of dollars to the federal debt while nickel and diming the poorest and most vulnerable Americans among us by cutting resources to food stamps and Medicaid. Now, the majority of the so-called fiscal hawks who claimed that they planned to torpedo the bill did no such thing. They actually folded and voted in favor of the legislation. Congressman Chip Roy was one of them. Despite speaking up against the bill like a real tough guy, he folded quicker than a wet paper bag. Let's watch.
We didn't draw red lines on purpose because we didn't want to hamstring our leadership too much, but we did create a framework and we were very strong in saying, guys, we need to address Medicaid, we need to address the Inflation Reduction Act. And you know what? We got a lot. We got a lot of really good stuff in that. So we will continue that way of doing things, but I do think we will draw a few red lines because we learned a little bit from the Saw Caucus. They're like, look, guys, we're going to get our state and local tax or bust. And guess what? They got a $40,000 pop that's $350 billion worth of cap increase. That's really expensive. I'm not so sure the Senate is going to just say thumbs up to that, right? The constituency in the Senate for the Saw Caucus is not as strong as in the House. So we've got a lot of work to do and going back and forth.
So Chip Roy is hoping that Senate Republicans will save him because he's not willing to cross Donald Trump in voting no on the bill. So let's take a look at the final vote in the House. So the bill passed 215 to 214, okay? So as you can see, 2 Republicans voted no, 2 more Republicans didn't vote at all, and 1 Republican, and that's Congressman Andy Harris, voted present. Among the Republicans who voted no on the bill, you have Congressman Warren Davidson of Ohio, and of course Thomas Massie of Kentucky. And among the Republicans who didn't vote, Andrew Garbarino of New York was one of them. The other was David Schukert of Arizona. So the Republicans who did not support the bill cite the irresponsible spending as their reason for doing it. And I'm gonna get into the nitty gritty in regard to how much this adds to the federal debt, which currently sits at $36 trillion. We spent close to $1 trillion last year on servicing our debt alone. So for anyone who's under the impression that racking up more and more debt isn't a problem, they're mistaken. But what could the Republicans do? They got to give their donors and themselves that nice, sweet little tax cut.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a stat here that perfectly explains the bill in a second. So first off, told you, they never cared about balancing the budget. They're never gonna balance it, they're not even gonna try. They're gonna put trillions and trillions and trillions on the deficit because between tax cuts for the rich and the deficit, tax cuts for the rich wins every single time. And so is Trump a populist MAGA? This is very different than the uniparty. No, this is exactly what the uniparty does. I've seen this movie dozens of times. This is Uniparty 101. Oh, we care about the deficit. Put another $5 trillion on the debt. Oh, the rich get it, the rich get it. Oh, but that's okay, let's cut from the neediest people in America, because that's what Jesus would do. By the way, we're the party of Christianity and family values and religion. No, you're not. All right, anyways. So now, when it comes to, funny thing first, the 2 guys who missed the vote, why didn't they vote? Garbarino fell asleep and Schweikert was late. So they were gonna vote yes, they were just schmucks, okay? So that's just a funny little fact. Now to the 2 guys who did the right thing, Warren Davidson and Thomas Massie. Would I agree with their proposed budget? No, I wouldn't, because they're on the right and I'm on the left, and I'm sure that they would cut things I would never cut, and they would probably do some tax cuts that I wouldn't do, okay? But at least they're honest. They said they care about the deficit, and it turns out they actually do care about the deficit. Every other Republican in the House is a liar.
100%.
And that's right. I was going to say the same exact thing. They're 100% liars. They never ever cared about the debt or the deficit. It's now indisputable. There's no, you can say, hey, no, I love the rich and I need them to get another tax cut. Or there's a tax cut I like in there, or there's a cut I like in there. But you can't say that you care about the deficit or the debt. And if you support this bill, here's a giant glass of shut up juice about the budget for the rest of your life, okay? So don't tell me you care about the budget. And when a Democrat's in office, I don't want to see you guys crying about the deficit or the debt. Okay, we are consistent and principled, and we think it's a problem when the Democrats create a giant deficit and when the Republicans create a much larger deficit. The Republicans have added so much more to the debt than the Democrats have. All right, now the stunning fact. So the cuts to SNAP, that's food stamps for the needy, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act are the exact same number as the tax cuts for people making above $500,000. That number is $1.1 trillion.
So steal from the poor to give to the rich?
Literally steal from the poorest people in the country who are desperate for food. Now, are you going to take food stamps? I'm not going to take food stamps because you have to go through a process. It's embarrassing. And it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be, but it is for a lot of people. So people aren't going in like, oh, let me get food stamps when I don't need it. Let me go get Medicaid when I don't qualify or don't need it, etc. You find fraud, no problem, we cut it. This isn't fraud. This is cutting the heart of the programs, okay? So they're taking 1.1 trillion from the people who need it the most. And if they did it because, God damn it, we're out of money, there's nothing we could do, we gotta balance the budget, that's one thing. No, they're doing it because they want to give people making above $500,000 another $1.1 trillion.
It's absurd.
Absurd, and nowhere near populism. This is the most fake populism you will ever see.
So for me, this bill ends it, okay? Trump, he loves the rhetoric. He went back to his 2016 greatest hits to appeal to working class Americans in lieu of Democrats who can't even muster the energy to pay lip service to working class Americans. So Trump comes in, pretends like he cares about working class Americans, but in reality, don't F around with Medicaid, remember? That was a big story this week. Don't F around with Medicaid, Trump allegedly told the Republican caucus in the House. Well, they F'd around with Medicaid, Trump. What are you gonna do, big bad populist? He's celebrating the passage of this bill in the House of Representatives. I can believe, because I live in America and I've been doing this job for 18 freaking years. I can believe that the Republican Party with a straight face thinks it's totally okay to take our taxpayer money, okay, funnel it to whatever pork barrel garbage they do for their donors, whatever subsidies they wanna pay for corporations. At the same time, nickel and dime the American people when it comes to the social safety net so they can give more handouts and more goodies to the richest people in this country. They are gonna destroy this country. They've been hyper-focused on destroying this country. It's disgusting that my taxpayer money goes toward all sorts of things that don't actually benefit my fellow Americans, that don't actually help my Americans when they're in need, okay? Instead, it gets sent abroad, whether it's to Israel, Ukraine. I know people get touchy with Ukraine. We're supposed to give them hundreds of billions of dollars over and over and over again in a war that they're not gonna win. I get it. I would rather that money go toward helping vulnerable people in America. But Republicans don't want it. Honestly, Democrats, I question whether they want it. They never really fight for it. We have two garbage parties that are not working for us. I need you to realize that. And for all the lefties who think everyone who voted for Trump is a bad person, can you just please explain to me, when you look at the two different parties and the two different options they had in the last election, do you really think they had great options? Do you really think they had great options?
Yeah, so just to back that up real quick. So Trump is renewing his tax cuts from his first term, and that's part of the devastation here and why it costs so much. Bush did tax cuts in his 2 terms, but he couldn't make them permanent. That's why Obama and Biden did. After they got into office, they pretended to be against the tax cuts, but they did what Bush literally couldn't do electorally. Because the way that they did it was they're like, no, it's okay, we're Democrats. So obviously we don't want tax cuts for the rich. But anyway, Obama sent Biden to negotiate a deal with McConnell. And over 90% of the benefits of those tax cuts went to the rich. So why do you think the Democratic Party lost the faith of the American people? Because while they talk a good game, they come behind the scenes and sell us out.
Always.
So now look, this is mainly about the Republicans and how terrible they are. But last thing on the Democrats, whenever they're in charge, the parliamentarian, there's filibusters, there's nothing we could do.
They're garbage.
Hold on. And now when they're in the opposition, you see how Republicans fight when they're in the opposition, right? Obama wants to nominate a Supreme Court justice. We'll block it for a year. Doesn't matter. We'll do anything to block it.
Can I jump in? I'm sorry, Jake. I have to. I'm sorry to interrupt you. What was going on with Biden when Democrats wouldn't fall in line for his agenda? Was he doing what Trump did? Trump's been at Capitol Hill every single day this week. Doing what? Bullying the crap out of the Republican caucus. Ensuring that deals are getting made so the bill gets passed. Okay, what was Biden doing? Biden was giving speeches about his good friend Joe Manchin, who was torpedoing his agenda. And it's either because Biden didn't actually mean it, or he was so out to lunch that he was just gonna support the very guy who was standing in the way of passing his legislation, his big agenda.
Yeah, and so
it's so embarrassing.
Now that the Democrats are in opposition, did they fight back as viciously as the Republicans? Now look, even the Radlibs, the Biden lovers, the Kamala lovers, even they're like, wait, why don't you guys fight back? Well, we all technically voted no. Do they have enough votes to give me and my donors a tax cut? I guess they do, don't they? Well, there was nothing we could do. Really? Why aren't you all on TV talking about what I just said, the 1.1 trillion tax cuts for people making about $500,000? That outrages everybody. Where are you guys? There was nothing we could do. There was nothing we could do. They're so full of crap. But back to the Republicans, who are the ones who are the most full of crap. The Republican politicians are loaded up to their eyeballs in crap. So, we care about the deficit. Now, don't mess around with Medicaid. They're messing around with Medicaid. Well, how about Medicare? No, we're gonna protect Medicare. They cut $500 billion from Medicare.
They're so disgusting. They're so disgusting. Look at your pay stub. Look at how much of your money goes toward the Medicare program. Okay, you're paying into the program, Republicans are stealing it from you.
They're stealing it.
They're stealing your money. That's what they did in this bill. That's what they did in this bill, the Republican Party. But I'm not done with Democrats yet. Let's go to graphic 8. Because I told you what the vote was, right? It passed in the House 215 to 214, okay? There was a Democratic vote that wasn't there because he died, and that was Jerry Connolly. Okay, so go to graphic 8. Another geriatric Democratic congressman dies in office, and then within hours, the Republicans pass their big, beautiful behemoth legislation by literally one vote. Fitting encapsulation for the current era. Michael Tracy, that is a winning tweet. I totally agree with you on that.
So look, obviously we feel terrible for Connolly passing away. We did a story about it the other day. But it is massively egotistical for these politicians to keep running for office when they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s. Pelosi's still running. She's 84 years old. Clyburn's 84. He's still running. Are they gonna die in office and we're gonna have another giant bill passed because we didn't have one more Democrat or 2 or 3? Yeah, probably. And do they care about that? No way. Besides which, they want the tax cuts. Okay, but back to beating up Republicans. Let's give you some more details.
Sure. So, I want to talk a little bit about how much this adds to the debt. There have been differing figures reported. The latest projection from the Congressional Budget Office showed that it will add $2.4 trillion.
That is the most conservative estimate I've seen.
That's the most conservative. I've seen estimates at 5 trillion. This was the latest that was reported in most of the news reports that I read about. But $2.4 trillion over 10 years to the national debt, which already exceeds $36 trillion. Now, keep in mind, Moody's downgraded the US's credit rating. We had a AAA credit rating, not no more, okay? And it's because of our growing debt and this concern that the United States isn't going to be like the Lannisters and always pay their debts. because we might not have the ability to do so. That's why our credit rating got downgraded. So the debt, even though there's a lot of fake concern about it from the Republican Party, it is actually true that the debt is a problem because it costs a lot of money to service that debt. Last year, it cost close to $1 trillion to do so. But Republicans don't care, our lawmakers don't care. They'll probably all be dead when we're responsible for dealing with it or the aftermath of this disaster that they're creating. They don't care.
Yeah, so the estimate is if these cuts are permanent, the tax cuts are permanent, which they are. So I don't know why they say if, then it would cost 5.2 trillion. So the real cost is at least 5.2 trillion. So, but mainstream media, in my opinion, plays along with the Republicans.
I wouldn't be surprised.
They love the tax cuts. They love them. So they're like, oh yeah, it's Trump saying something mean or bad or naughty. Huge deal, right? Oh, trillions going to the rich, putting $5 trillion on the debt when the Republicans have been pretending and lying our whole lives about how they care about the debt? Nah, barely a word about it. I mean, this is the most consequential thing that Trump will do in his presidency. It was the only thing he did in his first term, and it's just passing with like barely a fight and with media barely noticing. It's unbelievable. So you'll get stuck with this, your kids, your grandkids, everybody gets stuck with this. Already they're putting all the costs on the middle class and the poor, but wait till we all have to pay this debt. You think the rich are gonna be around and go, oh yeah, it was our fault? You think the corporations are gonna be around and say, oh, you're right, we're the ones who took trillions of dollars in tax cuts. Now we'll pay it back. No, they won't. They'll be gone, and we'll be stuck with this bill.
The measure would slash spending on social safety net programs by more than $1 trillion. $1 trillion over the next 10 years. And that's not even the full extent of the cuts we're talking about. According to analysis by the Congressional Budget Office, the mammoth legislation could also force nearly $500 billion in cuts to Medicare over the next decade to keep the national deficit within legal limits unless Congress later adjusts the limits. The legislation could strip Medicaid coverage from 8.7 million people and lead to 7.6 million more uninsured people over 10 years.
So they're cutting 16 million from people off of Medicaid with this little cute trick that they've got. Oh, if you're unemployed, you don't get Medicaid. If you're employed, you don't get Medicaid because you don't qualify for Medicaid because you're making too much money. So they're squeezing everyone out of Medicaid but Trump gets the credit in the press for saying, don't mess with Medicaid. Well, all of the press, including right-wing media, are you guys gonna go back and be honest to your audience and say, oh, by the way, Trump was lying, the Republican Party was lying, and they did mess with Medicaid. And you know when they said they wouldn't cut Medicare? Trump's a liar. He did cut Medicare, $500 billion from Medicare. And so, okay, he puts this gimmick in there about, oh, we won't, we'll have taxes on tips and overtime. So it makes it seem like, oh, it's for the masses, for the average American, right? No, did you know that 41% of the tax cuts are gonna go to the top 5%?
Yeah, they are. Let's go to graphic 7. Let's show you. This helps you visualize like the entirety of the bill and what it does, okay? So this was put together by the Washington Post. It's excellent. It shows you that extending Trump's 2017 tax cuts will cost this country $2.7 trillion over the next 10 years. The increase to the standard deduction will add another $1.3 trillion. There's a child tax credit in there, which I would like to keep. I would like to help families in America, so that I'm totally fine with. That's $797 billion. Oh, look at that, an additional $150 billion in defense spending. Then you have the border wall and immigration restrictions. That's another $147 billion in spending and more money or more debt, I should say. Then you look at what they're cutting and look at what their priorities are. $792 billion in cuts to Medicaid, $678 billion to rescind climate change money, cuts to anti-poverty food assistance. Those are the food stamps we were talking about. They're gonna cut $295 billion from that.
And they're gonna cut $295 from student loan changes. So you're gonna be saddled with more debt if you went to college. And if you're hungry, too bad, we're gonna cut it. You're sick and you're poor, too bad, we're gonna cut it. But if you're making over $500,000, boy, do we have great news for you. You're getting trillions. So this is a sick bill that, and on the defense spending. So look, I love Grok. It's just a random point. But so one thing Elon Musk has done brilliantly right, okay? And so Grok does fact checking, and the right wing on social media keep asking Grok, is it true what Cenk's saying? No way, right? And Grok says, yeah, Cenk is right. Why? Because I bothered to look it up before I posted it, right? There was one time that Grok said I was wrong. They said, oh no, they're only going to add 100 billion to defense spending. What now, Grok? I told you, 150 billion, okay? So, and by the way, just another side note here, for the schmucks in the radical left who are like, oh, you thought they were gonna cut defense. No, I didn't. I said, I challenge you to cut defense, which then exposes them when they don't cut defense, but adds to it, okay? So Elon, where are you at? You said you were gonna cut defense. Oh, wait a minute. I wanna tell you about one last thing in the bill. It's also funding $25 billion to Golden Dome. Now, Golden Dome is this nonsensical project where we're theoretically going to defend America from space, okay? And you know who's the leading contender to get the money? Oh, look at that, SpaceX. That's Elon's company. So you put in $290 million, but if you get back billions out of that $25 billion honeypot, right? Well, then you made a great investment, Elon. He invested in the corruption of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and it looks like he's going to be handsomely rewarded. Hey, look at that, more money to the richest people on earth. And they were full of crap on cutting defense. They were full of crap on Medicaid and Medicare. And yes, the great chunk of this money is going to the richest people on earth.
Oh, this country's so corrupt, it's disgusting.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.